Welcome everyone to this panel called A Better Living Thanks to Machine Learning. So this word better is, I think, the core of the question. So what does that actually mean? We obviously have a wonderful panel here to help discuss that question. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys to basically answer the question super directly to kick off. I think better for one person can be worse for someone else, and it's definitely something that's a subjective word. So should we start with what do you think better living means, and how can AI affect that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, actually, I always like to view also machine learning and AI a bit of an extension to normal software engineering. So basically with software engineering, we sort of reached a status where we couldn't make that much more progress when it comes to the cognitive abilities of humans, for example, right? So things like visual understanding language. And there we've seen a lot of progress over the last years, and enabling, for example, applications like machine translation, visual recognition. So there have been at Thurau a couple of demonstrations of startups showing glasses that were equipped with a video camera, and the camera could then read to visually impaired people, read certain text or recognize certain objects. So for me, definitely this means that we will have a better living thanks to machine learning. But there are, of course, tons of other applications. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Neeraj, what does a better living mean to you?
If you allow me, I'll answer it a little bit more philosophically and a bit more abstract. And before I say that, maybe I should highlight why am I in a position to make that comment. So obviously, like many of us, I've been very interested in the power of technology to change our lives. And I think it's the life experience, to me, that's the most important aspect, why we are here and what we are about to do with it. And so as I've observed the proliferation of mobile technology, which is an area where I work in, privacy aside, I think it has been progress at the cost of many other factors that I think are valuable to the quality of life. Our ability to concentrate, our ability to foster personal relationships, and so on. So I think for me, the question about better living probably connects to higher consciousness and our ability to connect with each other and with this planet and be able to live happily and so on. So that for me is probably and then where AI plays a role, I think AI is one another step that improves technology. I think many of the speakers here at this wonderful TOA conference have talked about how difficult it is to interface with computers, typing stuff into their phones and so on. And even for repetitive tasks, the computers don't remember, like even Uber search or whatever, Google search. We would like it to remember and personalize the experience a lot more. And I think machine learning therefore presents the opportunity to connect data in unique ways, connect past experiences, and make our interaction with the computers a lot more natural. Mm-hmm. So that's the opportunity, I think.
And Bart?
So I've been focusing on healthcare since 17 years, and our main focus was on digitalizing the knowledge into records, but it didn't give any purpose. And during the last 4 years, I've seen tremendous evolutions by the application of machine learning. And for me, it allows us to scale knowledge. And if you look at a worldview, you look at that 70% of the world doesn't have access to expert knowledge in healthcare. And I think if you look at it from a macro perspective, on a global perspective, we are able to scale knowledge. And we have seen that with the applications we have built for oncology, that we found our first clients in Thailand, in India, in countries who are lacking expertise knowledge. In terms of delivery in our systems, I think what you said as well is, if you look at healthcare, we talk about desktop physicians. They spend 50% of their time on a keyboard, and nurses spend 20% of their time on on the patient. And if we can give time back by having better interactions with machines and make that more natural, we get better human interactions on healthcare, which is completely lacking at the moment. So
yeah, I think healthcare is an obvious area where machine learning is creating a better living. John, you're obviously deeply ingrained into the healthcare space. What does it mean to you, better living?
Well, this belief is very much at the core of what we do at Clue. That's what the app is about. And what you said, it's about scaling knowledge. And it's also, for us at Clue, it's about deepening the knowledge and awareness that individual women can have about their bodies, which is something that it's a recent field. The word femtech has been popping up, which I kind of like. And for us, it's all about for the individual to know themselves better, taking the knowledge, like macro knowledge, and applying to themselves, knowing whether what you experience in your everyday life is that normal. You know, simple practical things like when is my next period? Ostensibly a simple question with a simple answer, but it's not that that simple. There's a lot of variables, and we really, I feel we're just at the start of what machine learning can do to improve this technology and improve people's lives. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Better life for sure.
Cool. Femtech, I like that. So just to come back though to is better for one person always better for everyone? So just to give a typical example, so self-driving cars, a fleet of self-driving cars on the road is you know, better for society, you could argue, you know, at the right level of accuracy, less casualties, get to a destination faster, but it's not better for the drivers or the Uber drivers who are losing their jobs. So what do you think about that? Are there areas where AI is inarguably better than the alternative? And what are those areas?
I really think there are a lot of areas in which AI enables completely new use cases and applications that we haven't seen before, right? So another example I mentioned before is machine translation, where, I mean, obviously there are also people who translate, but we would never, ever ask a professional translator when we go to another country, we cannot speak the local language, and now we want to talk to the people there. So we could assume that in a few years from now, this will be normal, that we have some simultaneous translator on our phone integrated that could help us there and communicate with the people there. So, and before that, that wasn't possible at all. And I do believe a lot of applications are really like that, but obviously you also have the other applications, as you mentioned. And you also have a lot of side effects from that too. For example, you mentioned self-driving cars. I think what a lot of people ignore also about self-driving cars is that we will soon probably have a lot of cars on our streets who are all equipped with a camera too. So this also means we have basically cameras everywhere, filming everything that exists. And obviously computer vision technology is also making progress and can also interpret that then rapidly. So, but yeah, about your question, yes, of course there are these fields and applications that now only exist due to AI. And these are, of course, yeah, the most interesting ones, I guess.
Yeah. Anyone else have thoughts on that?
So in AI and using it and applying it into healthcare, if you look at physicians, and if you combine physicians, supporting them with algorithms, we saw that the best outcomes is when they work together. So it's not about replacing physicians. So I don't think there is any risk in healthcare that we will replace physicians. And if you look at healthcare itself, if you look at what makes you health, it's 30% is your DNA, 10% is clinical, and 70 or 60% of it is social, is your life, it's how you live. And in healthcare itself, on the delivery, we lack compassion. And if you look at the 7-minute consultation today, then perhaps 10 seconds of that is about compassion, is about putting your hand on the shoulder, looking into the eyes, and understanding the patient's emotions. And I think we should not try to replace that by machines. If a robot would tell you you have 3 weeks to live in 7 hours and 5 minutes, I don't think this would be the right way to deliver the message. I think we need to redefine value. And I think instead of discussing UBI, we should discuss what are the new value systems. And if there could be a billing code for compassion in the healthcare system, which is not the case today, I think we have to look into these kind of solutions that we, what we automate or what we will support to replace that to things that are lacking into the healthcare system today.
So you talked about being like a right way and a wrong way to apply machine learning to a problem, and telling someone exactly how long they have to live via a computer is obviously the wrong way. So if we're all aiming for a better living, and I think that's what everyone's aiming for, no one's trying to make things worse, is the path to get there primarily through technological innovations, or is it more tweaking business models and applying AI in new and different business kind of areas or different ways of thinking about how to apply AI. Is that where we can reach? Is that how we can get a better living? So in your spaces that you guys work in, my question is: have you seen applications of maybe fairly standard machine learning technologies? Nothing breakthrough in terms of the tech, but applied in a different way, which is producing a much better living for consumers.
It's a difficult question because healthcare systems are very local, so healthcare delivery is very different in each of the countries. If you look at the US, I think now with the system being changed again, having 20 million people not insured, I think there will be a lot of challenges to overcome. So the business models in each of the country could look very different. But I think at the end, if these services, what will happen, I think in 10 years from now, 80% of all classified diagnoses will be better done by algorithms, and these will be delivered by a service, a digital service that will scale. What we have seen in the internet, what scales gets commoditized, what gets commoditized, the price goes down. So we can start delivering that on a much more global level. And so I think there's opportunity as well for healthcare systems or socialized healthcare systems, which we all live in Europe in, to start delivering these kind of services to countries that don't have access. It doesn't always have to be the business model that Silicon Valley drives. I think we can open up these services and deliver services to countries such as Africa or Asia where they don't have access. And Germany or Europe would get access to data which we are lacking of. But we would, in this same part, we would deliver a service and socialize or deliver a socialized healthcare system through digital services, which is a vision, but I think that would be possible. I don't think it's all about monetizing and centralizing that knowledge and then being in control of everything, which is a huge danger as well. I don't know.
Thoughts on business model innovations with AI?
Well, I mean, I think all these new technologies that we're building and the increased capabilities of AI, they're going to create new business models. And I think a lot of interesting things are coming up with respect to decentralization, which isn't directly related. Well, it has a lot of touch points with AI, and I think that's something that we need to explore a little bit further, because one of the implications of AI is data hungry. So we tend to create these silos. How can we evolve, or how can we train machine learning models in a decentralized environment? I think we're seeing technologies like blockchains, all that stuff. I think maybe through decentralization we'll see more advances in terms of business models, and I think it's going to be an interesting technological challenge how we map that to this new world of machine learning for everything. We want to apply machine learning to every kind of problem that we can imagine we can get some data for.
Yeah. So let's talk about decentralization, because with machine learning, the more data you have, the better you are. And the better you are and the better your product is, the more data you get. And it's kind of this self-reinforcing prophecy almost. And so in a world where, or in a space, AI and machine learning, whereby essentially the big get bigger and the strong get stronger, and the Googles and Facebooks are the best because they have the most data, and the most data means that they are then the best. Does that then naturally lead itself towards consolidation and monopolization of industries? And is that a good or bad thing in your guys' opinions?
Probably it will lead to that, actually. So you can really assume that this data network effect really take place. So eventually you will have a winner takes all kind of economy, and that for sure is happening right now too.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's of course a bad thing, of course. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, right now what we can also see, there appear also a lot of startups in this field who are not really competing with Google and Facebook on their turf, but on new use case and new fields. For example, Clue is a good example for that, I think. So, so basically, this field is also changing so quickly. But of course, at the end, I mean, what you said, of course, is true, right? So it will certainly happen that the big companies will harvest more and more data and own more of the data than the others. Yeah.
Neeraj?
I'd like to take a more long-term view in my response. So earlier you asked about, is machine learning as applied to taking away jobs from Uber drivers a good or bad thing? It kind of connects from that, because my view is that we should automate as much as we can. This question about does it take away jobs is not new. It happened when we had ATM machines back in 1995. And then people found better ways to organize the economy and different jobs and different purposes in life. And I think so with this stuff, it just takes it one on a higher notch. And so long term, I think even if a company is aggregating this data, if you project 10, 20 years in the future, that company may or may not be around, but humanity would have moved forward. And so in that sense, I support the idea of whatever it takes to automate as much as possible and go through the exercise till we get to a better platform.
Mm-hmm. And I think the foundation of everything is actually access to data. So what I've been trying here in Germany is to try to create, it's an election year, so there's a lot of opportunity here to drive new laws after the election, is to see if we can look at a data donation law. So that means if we get access to data of people who died and their data is still in records, that's 900,000 people in a year in Germany alone. So I think there are other ways to have access to data and give that data to research and open up that data to not having that owned by only corporates. Like I work for a corporate, we have 300 million patient lives on data anonymized, which we sell as a service. But I still think that there will be other ways to get access to data. And I'm really driving that law because there is a lot of discussion about having access to data, to see as simple as donating your organs, you donate your data. And I think most of the people I challenged that question to, they were all, I saw no negative reactions on donating your data when you die. And if you would do it on a European level, this would create a huge access of data that would be available for research. So I think there's a lot of things we haven't challenged and looked at, and I think we have to be creative in how to open up that market, because that centralization would be not the way to go forward.
Yeah. So linking that back, giving up your data to the question, in terms of, for one person, giving up your personal data to train an algorithm which gives you a better, more personalized service is great, and that definitely is a better living. But for another person, that same idea is something that they're very uncomfortable with, and that privacy issue is something which they definitely do not consider to be a better living. So where do you guys stand on that? Is it a case of the consumer almost having to trust the business to do the right thing by their data, and things like GDPR will hopefully ensure that does happen? Or is there more and more tighter regulation required to ensure that businesses are acting ethically?
I think this is a really important and interesting discussion, and the part of it that I'm most interested in is the notion of ownership of data, and I think it's important to take a step back and consider what we actually mean with data. A lot of the data that we're collecting is kind of observational data, like measurements, tracking, behavioral tracking. But actually, a lot of this data is also, it's not just a representation of something that we do in quote-unquote real life. It is the action in and of itself. Like we actually, we do stuff online. We write things on social media, and then that is the action itself. So the data that we are contributing is really an extension of ourselves. And so the question of ownership becomes all the more important. Are we, what sort of contract do we create with these companies that we trust with our data? Do we actually trust them, or are we just we're pretty casual about it? But I think we're getting to the point now where we're realizing we're actually contributing a lot of value just by being part of the system. To what degree should we have control over it, and how do we implement that? And GDPR, in my view, is an effort to try and clarify that trust relationship.
Mm-hmm. That I think is a really, really good point. So how we handle data right now, I mean, it seems to be really flawed, right? So we sign on to a service, and then we agree to the terms and conditions without reading them. And basically there somewhere hidden is that all the data that we create, we donate to the company, and they can sell it, they can do with it what they want. We all know that, but yeah, we never really read through that. And this approach seems to be really flawed. So I also do believe that the data that we create, so for example, also when you consider companies like Fitbit who record your heart rate or how many steps you have been walking per day, you should actually own that data and you should be responsible for sharing it with the companies that you trust and not sharing it with the others. But we have reversed the whole process, and now people don't really trust these larger companies anymore, and they have a reason for that, obviously. So, but I'm actually not sure if you can reverse the process because, companies nowadays believe that data is new oil, basically, and based on that, they're doing whatever they can to get their hand on more data. But ultimately, that should be the case because the data is so super valuable, right? So I would love to give my data out to, research institutes to do, research on health conditions and whatsoever. It would be super, super useful for that. But I'm of course afraid of doing that because in that moment when I do it, I'm losing control of the data too.
Yeah, and exactly, it's all about trust. And if you, I don't think a lot of people are aware about the contract they sign when they don't even read the terms and conditions. And we had now 2 cases recently. It's Jawbone who went bankrupt. Jawbone had like tens of millions of people wearing the Up. Well, on that Up device, you see your sleeping patterns. You can see if you're sleeping with somebody. You can see if you have sexual activities. That data is now being sold because in that terms and condition, there is written in terms of a bankruptcy, personal data, maybe parts of the asset being transferred. And there was a study from the Financial Times that looked at how many data brokers get access to the data. It's being sold to 45 different data brokers who on their point sell the data further. So I don't think people are aware that data is being transactioned, that the most intimate data about your sleep, about your sexual activities is being transferred to data brokers. So I think we need to, on regulation terms, we need to, if in terms of mergers, in terms of bankruptcy, there needs to be something like consent that as a user, you need to approve that your data is part of the transaction. But of course, this would kill a lot of the monetization models for startups. So I don't know what you have in your terms and conditions, if there's also that liability in there that you say like in terms of merger, because that was the second case, My Sugar, rumors are 80 million to 200 million, of 1 million on diabetes patients, patient data is being sold to a big pharma. I don't think these people who applied to My Sugar were applying for giving their data to a big pharma, but they haven't read it. And I think in most of the startups I've seen in the terms and conditions, there's that sentence. And I think we need to adjust that. But that's, again, related to the business model and to the monetization of it. So
I think we might have to wrap up. Do we have time for Q&A? Or yes? No? No, no time for Q&A.
Hello? Yes, but we're going to have a short break, 15 to 20 minutes, so I invite everybody to have conversations with each one of you during the break, because we need to move on, unfortunately.
Cool.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.